Imagine stepping into a world where the line between the divine and the everyday was blurred, where gods walked among humans in the form of animals, and the dead carried spells to navigate a treacherous underworld. This wasn't fantasy, this was the reality of ancient Egypt, a civilization steeped in beliefs so strange and captivating, they'll make you see their world in a whole new light. We all know about the pyramids and the mummies, but what about the forgotten rituals, the bizarre deities, and the mystical practices that shaped their daily lives? From worshipping cats as sacred guardians to fearing a cosmic serpent that threatened to swallow the sun, their religion was anything but ordinary. Today, we're peeling back the layers of time to reveal 25 of the most surprising and lesser-known beliefs of ancient Egyptian religion. These aren't just curiosities, they're windows into a mindset that saw magic in the mundane and divinity in the details. So if you're ready to uncover the secrets buried beneath the sands, stay with us, because what you're about to discover might just rewrite everything you thought you knew about this ancient civilization. One of the most fascinating and revealing beliefs in ancient Egyptian religion was the weighing of the heart ceremony. This wasn't just some abstract idea, it was the ultimate test every soul faced in the afterlife. Picture this: after death, your heart would be placed on one side of a golden scale, balanced against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order. If your heart was lighter than the feather, you'd earn eternal peace in the field of reeds. But if it weighed heavy with lies, greed, or cruelty, the monstrous Ammit, part lion, part hippo, part crocodile, would lurk nearby, ready to devour your heart on the spot, erasing your soul forever. This wasn't just about morality, it was a vivid reminder that every action in life had cosmic consequences. The Egyptians didn't just fear death, they feared being judged unworthy of an afterlife altogether. And here's the twist: they didn't leave it to chance. The Book of the Dead was packed with spells to help tip the scales, even instructing the dead how to plead their case before Osiris, the god of the underworld. Imagine reciting lines like, "O my heart, do not betray me, do not stand against me as a witness," all to outwit divine judgment. But what's truly striking is how this belief shaped daily life. Egyptians didn't just wait until death to worry about morality. They lived by principles like honesty, fairness, and kindness, knowing that every choice could one day be weighed against a feather. It wasn't just about avoiding punishment, it was about aligning with the harmony of the universe itself. And that's why this ceremony wasn't just a myth, it was the foundation of an entire ethical system, reminding the living that the afterlife began with how they walked through the world. Deep in the heart of ancient Egyptian belief was a concept so powerful, it could shape destinies: the magic of true names. To them, a name wasn't just a label, it held the essence of a person, a god, even an object. Know someone's true name and you wielded power over their very existence. This wasn't mere superstition, it was a cosmic rule woven into their understanding of the universe. Take the gods, for example. Many deities had secret names hidden from mortals because revealing them could weaken their power. The sun god Ra, in one myth, only allows the cunning goddess Isis to learn his true name after she poisons him, and even then she swears never to share it. And it wasn't just gods who guarded their names. Pharaohs often carried multiple names, some known to the public, others whispered only in sacred rituals. But here's where things get chilling. The erasure of a name was considered a fate worse than death. Without a name, a soul couldn't be remembered or even exist in the afterlife. That's why the infamous pharaoh Akhenaten, who tried to replace Egypt's many gods with worship of a single sun disk, was so thoroughly scrubbed from history after his death. His monuments were defaced, his inscriptions chiseled away. To the Egyptians, this wasn't just revenge, it was erasing him from eternity itself, and this belief trickled down to everyday life. Parents chose names carefully, believing they could influence a child's fate. Even objects had names imbued with power. A sword or a ship wasn't just a tool, but a being with its own identity. It was a world where words weren't just sounds, they were spells capable of creation or destruction. So the next time you casually introduce yourself, think twice. In ancient Egypt, that name of yours would have been a sacred key to your soul. The Eye of Horus wasn't just a mystical charm, it was a calculator in disguise. While most ancient civilizations separated religion from practical life, the Egyptians saw no such divide. This sacred symbol, often painted on amulets for protection, doubled as a precise mathematical tool, its parts representing fractions used in everything from measuring grain to building temples. Each segment of the eye, the eyebrow, pupil, or teardrop stood for a specific value, 1/2, 1/4, even 1/64. Combine them and you had a system so efficient, it shaped trade, architecture, and medicine for centuries. Imagine a scribe tallying up supplies for a pharaoh's tomb. Instead of scratching out numbers, they'd sketch fragments of the Eye of Horus, each stroke a piece of sacred geometry. The right side of the eye, 1/2 of a bushel of wheat, the spiral marking the tear duct, 1/32 of a jar of oil. This wasn't just math, it was math blessed by the gods, where every calculation carried the weight of Horus's legendary battle to restore order to the cosmos. But the brilliance didn't stop there. These fractions were so precise, they helped standardize measurements across Egypt's sprawling kingdom. Builders used them to align pyramids with celestial patterns. Doctors prescribed medicines in eye fraction doses, believing the symbol's power could heal as it measured. Even in death, the eye mattered. Offerings to the dead were divided according to its ratios, ensuring fairness in the afterlife. What makes this belief truly remarkable isn't just its ingenuity, but how it reveals the Egyptian mindset to them. The divine wasn't separate from the everyday, it was the glue holding society together. A symbol of protection could also be a tool of commerce, proving that faith and function weren't just connected, they were two sides of the same coin. So the next time you glance at an Eye of Horus amulet, remember, it's not just watching over you, it's solving equations. Among Egypt's towering, elegant gods, Bess stood out literally. While others wore regal headdresses and stood with solemn grace, this dwarf deity grinned with a lion's mane, stuck out his tongue, and brandished a knife. Far from the serene figures adorning temple walls, Bess was the god who partied in your living room, danced at births, and scared off nightmares with his wild, chaotic energy. His very existence shattered the idea that divinity had to be distant and perfect. Here was a god who looked like he belonged in a backstreet tavern, yet held the sacred duty of guarding homes and families. What made Bess so extraordinary wasn't just his appearance, it was how ordinary people embraced him. While pharaohs prayed to Ra in sun-drenched temples, everyday Egyptians hung Bess's image above their beds, carved his likeness into headdresses, and even tattooed his face onto their bodies. He wasn't just a protector, he was a constant, approachable presence. Need comfort during childbirth, Bess was there, singing and shaking a tambourine to drown out the mother's cries of pain. Fearful of snake bites or scorpion stings, his grotesque face on an amulet could send evil spirits fleeing. Even in death, his image adorned tombs, ensuring safe passage to the afterlife. But here's the real twist. Bess's popularity reveals something profound about Egyptian spirituality. Divinity wasn't just about awe, it was about intimacy. A god could be fierce and funny, monstrous and maternal, all at once. While Osiris judged souls and Thoth measured time, Bess did something just as vital. He made the divine feel personal. His laughter echoed in nurseries, his dances turned fear into joy, and his knife wasn't just a weapon, it was a promise that even the smallest, strangest beings could hold back the darkness. So the next time you picture ancient gods, don't just imagine gold and grandeur. Remember the dwarf who proved that sometimes holiness wears a leopard skin and knows how to party. The Book of the Dead wasn't just a sacred text, it was a spiritual playlist carefully curated for each individual's journey into the afterlife. Unlike rigid religious scripts, these funerary writings were as unique as the people they guided. A wealthy merchant might commission spells to navigate treacherous underworld rivers, while a farmer's version could focus on ensuring fertile fields in the next life. This wasn't mass-produced dogma, it was divinity where every scroll reflected personal fears, hopes, and even unfinished business left on earth. Imagine standing in a scribe's workshop, selecting spells like we'd choose apps today. Need protection against demon snakes, there's a chant for that. Worried about forgetting your name in the afterlife, add the spell for not dying a second death. Some included maps of the underworld, while others had passwords to bypass hostile gatekeepers. One scroll might emphasize moral purity, filled with declarations like, "I gave bread to the hungry," while another could be packed with magical loopholes to outsmart the gods themselves. But here's what's truly revealing. This customization shows how fluid Egyptian spirituality was. The afterlife wasn't a one-size-fits-all destination. It was an extension of life's individuality. A mother might include spells to watch over her children from beyond, while a soldier carried incantations to heal battle wounds in the next world. Even the illustrations were tailored. Scenes of judgment could be expanded or simplified based on what the buyer could afford. And the choices weren't just about vanity. They revealed deep anxieties, fear of hunger, oblivion, or divine retribution, all addressed through personalized magic. A scribe might have copied the base text, but the final product was as distinctive as a fingerprint. In a civilization obsessed with eternity, they understood something profound, that salvation too should have room for the human touch. For the ancient Egyptians, death didn't simplify the soul, it multiplied it. Instead of a single spirit, they believed in a constellation of soul aspects, each with its own role in eternity. Take the Ba and the Ka, two of the most vital. The Ba was the personality, the essence of who you were, your memories, your quirks, even your voice. After death, it was free to roam as a bird with a human head, flitting between the underworld and the living realm. Picture it, your Ba might visit old haunts, perch on your favorite tree, or whisper to loved ones in dreams. It wasn't ghostly haunting, it was the soul staying connected to the life it once knew. But the Ka, that was your life force, the spark that kept you beyond death. Unlike the wandering Ba, the Ka never left the tomb. It stayed with the body, sustained by offerings of bread, beer, and roasted meat. Families would recite spells, urging the Ka to take the thousands of loaves, the thousands of jars, left in the burial chamber, and if relatives stopped bringing food. No problem. Elaborate menu spells painted on tomb walls magically turned into real sustenance, ensuring the Ka never starved. Even the famous opening of the mouth ceremony wasn't just ritual, it was a cosmic wake-up call, reviving the Ka's senses so it could taste, smell, and enjoy eternity. Here's what's truly fascinating. This belief wasn't just about survival in the afterlife. It reveals how Egyptians saw identity as something layered, almost fragile. Lose your Ba and you'd forget yourself, neglect your Ka and you'd fade into nothingness. That's why tomb robbers were so feared. Stealing a mummy's jewelry was bad but disturbing its offerings. That was murder in the spiritual realm, and the duality didn't stop there. While the Ba soared, the Ka anchored you, creating a balance between freedom and stability. Together, they wove a safety net for the soul, ensuring that no matter where eternity took you, you'd never stop being you. It's a concept so nuanced, it makes modern ideas of the soul seem almost simple by comparison. Before the sun rose over the Nile for the first time, before even the gods of Thebes or Memphis took shape, there was water endless, churning and dark. And in that darkness slithered and croaked the Ogdoed of Hermopolis, 8 primordial deities so ancient they made Ra look like a newcomer. These weren't your typical elegant, lion-headed or falcon-crowned gods. No, these were frog-headed and serpent-faced, embodiments of the raw, unfiltered chaos that existed before creation itself. Picture a cosmic swamp where 4 pairs of male and female deities represented the building blocks of existence. Nun and Nornet were the endless waters, He and Horhit stood for infinite space, Kuk and Korkit personified darkness, and Ammon and Ammonet symbolized hidden power. Together, they weren't just gods, they were the ingredients of the universe before order took hold. Unlike the sun-worshipping myths of Heliopolis, where creation began with a single spoken word, Hermopolis told a messier, more mysterious story. Here, the world began with a ripple in the void, a cosmic egg laid by these amphibious and reptilian beings, cracking open to reveal the first sunrise. But here's what makes this belief so revealing. While most Egyptian cities emphasized light conquering darkness, Hermopolis embraced the chaos that came before. These gods weren't enemies to be defeated, they were the necessary foundation of creation itself. Their frog heads weren't just bizarre, they symbolized fertility and rebirth, while the serpent faces hinted at the cyclical nature of time. Even Ammon, who later rose to fame as a king of gods in Thebes, started here as a whisper in the dark, a force waiting to be unleashed, and the legacy of the Ogdoed didn't end with myth. They lingered in temple rituals where priests invoked their names to tap into primal power. Think of it like rebooting the universe by calling on these ancient forces. They believed they could renew the world, wiping away corruption and starting fresh. It's a reminder that for all their love of order, the Egyptians never forgot the creative potential of chaos. So the next time you see a frog or a snake, remember, to the people of Hermopolis, they weren't just creatures. They were the architects of existence. The ritual of opening the mouth wasn't just a funeral custom, it was ancient Egypt's version of pressing the power button on the afterlife. Imagine this, after weeks of mummification, priests in leopard skin robes would circle the wrapped body, chanting spells while touching a ceremonial adze, a blade-shaped tool, to the mummy's lips, eyes, and ears. This wasn't symbolic theater. They believed these precise motions literally jump-started the senses, allowing the dead to breathe, speak, and even taste offerings in the world beyond. At first glance, it might seem like superstition, but look closer. The tools used weren't random. A forked metal rod symbolized the constellation Ursa Major, linking the ritual to cosmic forces. Incense purified the air, while a priest wearing the mask of Anubis played the role of the god himself, bridging the human and divine. Even the sequence-mattered lips came first, so the deceased could plead their case before Osiris, followed by eyes to see the underworld's dangers, then ears to hear protective spells. Every gesture was a calculated step toward resurrection. What's truly remarkable is how this ceremony blurred the line between magic and medicine. The same instruments, hooks, blades, and rods resembled surgical tools used in life. To the Egyptians, healing and resurrection were 2 sides of the same practice. A priest might have used similar motions to remove a cataract from a living patient as he did to open a mummy's eyes. The ritual even included offering a meal, often a sacred bull's heart, as if the dead were convalescing patients needing strength for the journey ahead. But here's the twist: this wasn't just about individual survival. The ceremony reinforced society's deepest values. By feeding the dead, the living affirmed their duty to ancestors, creating a chain of care stretching across generations. A mummy who could eat could also intercede with the gods, becoming a guardian for the family left behind. So while modern science might dismiss the ritual as fantasy, its real power lay in something timeless: the human need to believe that death isn't an end, but a transition where love and memory still have a voice. The sacred blue lotus wasn't just a flower to the ancient Egyptians, it was a portal to the divine. Floating on the Nile by day, its petals would close at night, sinking beneath the water only to rise again at dawn. This daily rebirth made it a symbol of the sun cycle, but its true power lay in what happened when humans consumed it. Priests and initiates brewed its petals into a potent tea, believing it could dissolve the boundaries between worlds, allowing visions of gods and glimpses into hidden realms. Archaeologists have found traces of the blue lotus in tombs and temple art, often depicted in scenes of celebration and ritual. One fresco even shows a woman holding the flower to her nose, her face tilted upward in ecstasy. Modern studies suggest the plant contains mild psychoactive compounds, which could explain its reputation for inducing altered states. But to the Egyptians, this wasn't just chemistry, it was sacred communion. Imagine a ceremony where worshippers, draped in linen and anointed with oils, drank this brew as incense swirled around them. The walls of the temple might have seemed to breathe, the statues of the gods whispering secrets only the enlightened could hear. What's fascinating is how this practice blurred the line between recreation and religion. While some likely used the lotus for pleasure at banquets, wall paintings show guests weaving the flowers into garlands. Its deeper purpose was spiritual. The lotus became a tool for priests to channel divine messages, or for mourners seeking contact with the dead. Even the god Nefertum, often shown with a lotus blossom on his head, embodied its dual nature. He was both the god of healing perfumes and the first sunlight, bridging the earthly and the eternal. But here's the twist. The blue lotus reveals how the Egyptians saw no contradiction between intoxication and enlightenment. To them, altered consciousness wasn't an escape, it was a sacred lens, sharpening the vision of truths hidden to everyday sight. In a civilization obsessed with cycles of death and rebirth, this flower offered something extraordinary, a way to experience resurrection while still alive. So the next time you see a water lily, remember, it wasn't just a plant to the ancients, it was a key to the unseen. Ammit wasn't a goddess to be praised with hymns or offerings. She was the nightmare lurking at the end of every Egyptian's afterlife journey. With the body of a lioness, the hips of a hippopotamus, and the jaws of a crocodile, this demoness embodied the three most feared man-eaters of the Nile. But her real terror wasn't her appearance, it was her role as the ultimate enforcer of cosmic justice, crouching beside the scales of judgment, waiting to devour hearts weighed down by sin. Think of her as the ancient world's most terrifying bailiff. When a soul stood trial in the hall of truth, their heart believed to hold every lie, cruelty, or act of greed, was placed on a golden scale opposite the feather of Mat. If the heart tipped the balance, Ammit didn't just kill the unworthy soul. She erased it completely, swallowing it in one gulp and condemning the deceased to a second death so final, even their name would vanish from memory. This wasn't just punishment, it was existential annihilation. Yet Ammit's power reveals something profound about Egyptian values. She wasn't evil, she was necessity. Without her, chaos would seep into the ordered universe. The guilty might slip into paradise, upsetting the delicate balance Mat maintained. So while priests didn't build temples to Ammit, they painted her vividly in tombs and scrolls, a constant reminder that morality wasn't just about rewards, it was about consequences. And here's the twist: the fear of Ammit shaped daily life more than any divine blessing could. Parents warned children that lies would feed the devourer. Scribes penned confessions like, "I gave bread to the hungry," not just to impress Osiris, but to lighten their hearts against her teeth. Even pharaohs, despite their divinity, dreaded her judgment. In a culture obsessed with eternal survival, Ammit was the shadow that gave light its meaning, proof that sometimes terror is the sharpest teacher. In ancient Egypt, the color of your hair could mark you as touched by chaos itself. Those born with fiery red locks weren't just unusual, they carried the spectral imprint of Set, the storm god known for murdering his own brother, Osiris. This wasn't just superstition, it was a belief woven into the fabric of their world, where even the human body could become a canvas for divine forces. Set's connection to red hair wasn't arbitrary. Ancient texts describe him as having hair red as the desert sands, a trait mirroring the scorching storms he commanded. Over time, this physical detail bled into daily life. Red-headed animals, especially donkeys, were sometimes ritually slaughtered to symbolically destroy Set's influence. Even children with copper-toned hair might face whispers, their very appearance seen as an omen of disruption. Yet here's the paradox: Set wasn't purely evil. As the god who defended Ra's solar barge against the serpent Apophis, he was chaos in service of order. Similarly, redheads weren't universally shunned. Some temple roles, particularly those involving storm or desert rituals, prized them as living links to the god's power. A red-haired priest might channel Set's ferocity to ward off evil, turning perceived curse into sacred duty. What makes this belief so revealing is how it mirrors society's uneasy relationship with ambiguity. The same trait that could marginalize a person in one context might elevate them in another, depending on whether chaos was needed as a shield or feared as a threat. It wasn't just about hair, it was about the tension between the unpredictable and the necessary, embodied in something as simple as strands of pigment. Today, we'd call this prejudice. To the Egyptians, it was cosmology in action. A reminder that even the gods weren't black and white, but shades of stormy red. The festival of drunkenness was no ordinary party. It was a sacred riot of beer, music, and ecstatic dancing, all to honor the moment alcohol saved the world. Picture this: legend claimed the goddess Hathor, unleashed as the fiery eye of Ra, had nearly wiped out humanity in a rage. Only a clever trick, flooding her path with beer dyed red to resemble blood, made her drink until she collapsed, forgetting her wrath. Every year, Egyptians reenacted this divine intervention by drinking themselves into a joyful stupor, believing that in their intoxicated state, they mirrored the goddess's transformation from destroyer to protector. Temples transformed during this celebration. Priests distributed jugs of beer brewed with special herbs, while worshippers danced to pounding drums and clattering sistrums, the sacred rattles of Hathor. But this wasn't just revelry, it was ritual. The goal was to reach a trance-like frenzy where the boundary between human and divine blurred. Some participants reported visions of the goddess herself, her cow ears flickering in the torchlight as she blessed them. Tomb paintings even show partygoers being carried home by slaves, their limbs loose with holy intoxication. Here's what's striking: the Egyptians saw drunkenness not as vice, but as a fleeting taste of divine chaos. In ordinary life, they prized balance, but this festival was a controlled unraveling, a way to channel Hathor's wild energy safely. By morning, the streets might have been littered with sleeping revelers, but the message was clear. Sometimes salvation comes not through restraint, but through surrender to the very forces that could destroy you. And the festival had a darker edge. Some scholars believe it mimicked the chaos before creation, a yearly reminder that order was fragile. By inviting controlled madness, Egyptians reaffirmed their trust in Maat, because even the gods needed reminding that joy could disarm violence. So next time you raise a glass, think of Hathor, a goddess who proved that sometimes the best way to save the world is to party it back to sanity. Every night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, an invisible war raged beneath the feet of the ancient Egyptians, a battle so critical the fate of the universe hung in the balance. At the helm of his golden bark, Ra, the sun god, navigated the treacherous waters of the underworld, facing the ultimate enemy, Apophis, the serpent of chaos. This wasn't just a myth, it was a nightly reality they believed kept the world from collapsing into darkness. Apophis wasn't some distant monster. He was pure destruction coiled into scale and fang, eternally hungry to swallow the sun and plunge creation back into the void. The Egyptians didn't leave this fight to the gods alone. In temples across the land, priests performed dramatic rituals to weaken Apophis before Ra's journey even began. They'd carve his name onto wax figurines, then slice them with knives. They'd recite spells so potent they were said to make the serpent's spine tremble. Some ceremonies involved burning red cloth the color of chaos, or trampling drawings of the serpent underfoot. These weren't empty gestures, they were cosmic reinforcements, humanity's way of tipping the scales in Ra's favor. But here's what's fascinating: Apophis could never be fully destroyed. Each night Ra wounded him, and each night the serpent regenerated, ensuring the battle repeated for eternity. This cyclical struggle revealed a profound truth about Egyptian thought: chaos wasn't an enemy to eradicate, but a force to eternally keep at bay. The world wasn't just created once, it was recreated every sunrise through Ra's victory. And the people mirrored this ritual in their own lives. Farmers avoided speaking Apophis's name at night, fearing it might summon his attention. Mothers told children stories of the serpent to explain storms or eclipses, temporary glimpses of the chaos lurking just beyond order's grip. Even the Nile's annual flooding, which brought life-giving silt, was seen as a smaller-scale balance between chaos and renewal. In the end, Apophis wasn't just a villain. He was the necessary shadow that made the light worth fighting for. Without the serpent's threat, Ra's triumph would mean nothing. The Egyptians understood something timeless. That order isn't a permanent state, but a daily choice, one that required faith, ritual, and the collective will to keep the sun rising. So when you watch a sunset tonight, remember, somewhere in the ancient mind, it wasn't just the end of a day. It was the beginning of a divine battle we're all a part of. The Djed pillar wasn't just a hieroglyph, it was the backbone of Egyptian cosmic order. Shaped like a towering column with crossbars, this sacred symbol represented the spine of Osiris himself, the god of resurrection. But its meaning ran deeper than anatomy. To raise the Djed was to summon stability into the world, a ritual so vital. It became the centerpiece of royal coronations and harvest festivals alike. Imagine crowds gathering in Memphis, watching as priests hoisted a massive, gilded Djed pole with ropes, chanting spells to establish stability for all time. The moment it stood upright, the people erupted in cheers, believing the kingdom's fortunes had just been renewed. This ritual wasn't mere theater. The Djed's connection to Osiris tied it to cycles of death and rebirth. When the god was murdered by Set, his dismembered body became the foundation of Egypt's fertility. His spine, symbolized by the Djed, literally held the land together. Farmers even painted the symbol on their storage jars, trusting it to protect their grain from rot, just as Osiris's reassembled body brought life back to the Nile's banks. But here's what's fascinating: the Djed also mirrored the human body's resilience. Medical texts describe the spine as a pillar of flesh, and priests performing the raising ceremony often wore amulets shaped like vertebrae. They saw a direct link between physical strength and cosmic order. An unbroken spine meant a soul could stand tall before Osiris in the afterlife. Even Tutankhamun's tomb held a golden Djed, placed there to ensure the boy king's resurrection would be as firm and unshakable as the symbol itself. Yet the Djed's power wasn't just about permanence. Its ritual raising acknowledged a truth the Egyptians knew well: stability isn't natural, it's chosen. Like the spine that must constantly resist gravity, order required active renewal. So when the priests lifted that pillar, they weren't just honoring a god. They were recommitting to the daily work of keeping chaos at bay, one upright jed at a time. In the scorching Egyptian sunlight, shadows weren't just absences of light, they were living extensions of the soul itself. While modern minds might dismiss a shadow as a mere silhouette, the ancients saw it as a third spiritual component, as vital as the Ba and Ka. Your shadow wasn't just following you, it was part of you, a silent companion with its own vulnerabilities and strength. Step into a temple courtyard at noon, and your shadow might shrink to nothing beneath your feet, but to the Egyptians that didn't mean it vanished. It meant it was gathering power, waiting to stretch long and protective by dusk. This belief wasn't poetic whimsy, it had real consequences. Tomb paintings often show figures with exaggerated, dark outlines, as if the artist was emphasizing their spiritual weight. Magical texts warn of spells that could attack a person by targeting their shadow step on the wrong enchanted symbol, and your shadow might be bound, leaving you weak or exposed to evil forces. Even the gods were depicted with shadows so potent they could function independently. In one myth, Hathor's shadow stretches across a battlefield, striking enemies before she lifts a finger. But here's what's truly revealing: the shadow's duality. It was both protector and liability. A strong shadow meant vitality. Statues and amulets were given deep-cut shadows to enhance their power. But lose control of it, and you risked spiritual fracturing. That's why certain rituals involved washing shadows in sacred water, purifying them like limbs. Parents would shade their children from the harshest sun, not just to prevent burns, but to keep their shadows, and thus their souls intact, and the shadow's influence didn't end at death. Funerary spells mention the deceased shadow moving freely in the afterlife, a guardian against underworld predators. Some coffins were painted with double shadows, as if the soul needed extra armor for its journey. In a world where light and dark were cosmic forces, your shadow wasn't just a shape. It was proof that even emptiness could have substance, and that every step you took left more than footprint. It left a piece of your soul stretching toward eternity. In the sands of Egypt, even the smallest paw prints left an eternal mark. The mummification of pets wasn't just a ritual, it was a testament to bonds that transcended death itself. While pharaohs prepared for the afterlife with golden masks, everyday Egyptians ensured their beloved cats, dogs, even baboons and falcons joined them in eternity, wrapped in linen and tucked into tiny sarcophagi decorated with prayers. Archaeologists have uncovered entire cemeteries dedicated to these animal companions, some so carefully preserved, their whiskers still bristle after millennia. Take the cat buried beside its owner in a tomb at Beni Hassan, curled as if in sleep, its collar of blue faience beads still gleaming. Or the hunting dog found near Thebes, its paws arranged as if mid-chase, forever ready to retrieve game for its master in the field of reeds. These weren't generic offerings, they were personalized farewells. Some pets wore amulets of Bastet, the cat goddess, while others had their names painted in hieroglyphs on miniature coffins. Mew for a cat meaning little mewer, or Tantan for a loyal hound. But here's what's striking: the care taken in these mummifications rivaled human practices. X-rays reveal cats with broken bones meticulously set in life. Dogs fed special diets to honor their service. One falcon, likely a noble's prized hunter, was preserved with its wings outstretched, every feather accounted for. The message was clear: these creatures weren't just property. They were family, their souls as worthy of preservation as any humans. Yet the practice wasn't solely sentimental. Animals also served as intermediaries. A mummified ibis might carry prayers to Thoth, while a cat could navigate the underworld's dangers with Bastet's grace. Even in death they worked, guarding, guiding, and loving. So the next time someone calls ancient Egypt obsessed with death, remind them they were actually obsessed with connection. and sometimes that connection had 4 legs, a tail, and a purr that echoed into eternity. Thoth didn't just measure time, he wore its reflection on his head. While most Egyptian gods crowned themselves with sun discs or towering plumes, this ibis-headed deity bore the silver crescent moon, a symbol of his role as the universe's grand archivist. But this wasn't just about astronomy. The moon's waxing and waning mirrored the rhythm of wisdom itself. Each night, as Thoth calculated the passage of hours with scroll and stylus, his light pulsed like the thoughts of a scholar, sometimes full and bright, other times a sliver of insight in the dark. Where Ra's sun blazed with unchanging glory, Thoth's moon embraced nuance. Its 28-day cycle became the framework for Egypt's lunar calendar, turning celestial mechanics into temple rituals, tax seasons, even the timing of medical treatments. Priests tracked the moon's phases to determine when to summon Thoth's guidance, believing the god's mathematical precision peaked under a full moon. Scribes invoked him before writing, their ink pots shaped like crescent moons, as if every word poured onto papyrus carried a drop of celestial calculus. But here's the twist. Thoth didn't just observe time, he salvaged it. In one gripping myth, the moon itself is endangered when the lioness goddess Tefnut flees Egypt, threatening to plunge the world into chaos. Thoth, ever the diplomat, coaxes her back with stories, restoring balance to the night sky. The tale reveals a profound truth. Wisdom isn't just about recording facts, it's about using language to repair fractures in the cosmic order. And the moon connection ran deeper than myths. Medical texts prescribed treatments based on lunar phases, linking Thoth's celestial domain to the body's tides. A fever might be treated differently under a waning moon than a waxing one, as if illness itself bowed to divine chronology. Even the famous Eye of Horus fractions trace back to lunar mathematics, each piece representing a day in the moon's cycle. What makes this belief so compelling is how it marries intellect to intuition. Thoth wasn't just a cold calculator. He was the reason a farmer knew when to plant by moonlight, or why a midwife timed births to the moon's pull. In a civilization that revered balance, the moon became the perfect metaphor, a light that didn't overpower but guided gently. Its cycles a silent lesson in patience and renewal. So the next time you glance at the night sky, remember, you're not just seeing a rock in orbit, you're witnessing the original clockwork of wisdom itself. The field of reeds wasn't some cloud-filled paradise strumming harps. It was an afterlife so distinctly Egyptian. It smelled of freshly plowed earth and ripening barley. Imagine arriving in eternity only to find yourself knee-deep in the same work that filled your earthly days, planting, harvesting, and tending cattle under a sun that never burned too hot. This wasn't punishment, it was the ultimate reward to a people who saw the Nile's floods as divine gifts. An endless fertile field was heaven perfected. Tomb paintings show the deceased happily reaping wheat taller than a man, their sickles gleaming in golden light. But here's the catch, this wasn't backbreaking labor. Magic animated the work. Spellbooks promised your plow will till by itself, and the grain will multiply 100-fold without effort. Even the water flowed uphill if you willed it, canals mirroring the Nile's perfect rhythm. The field of reeds wasn't just a place, it was agrarian idealism frozen in time, where every crop grew abundant and no drought ever came. Yet this vision reveals something profound about Egyptian values. Their paradise wasn't about escaping work. It was about work purified, stripped of struggle. A farmer who spent his life battling locusts and low floods could finally relish the act of sowing without fear. The wealthy elite who'd never held a hoe in life were often depicted farming alongside peasants, as if death erased class but not purpose, and the details mattered. Your plot in the field of reeds mirrored your family's earthly holdings, down to the same sycamore trees shading the borders. loved ones who passed before you would greet you with baskets of produce, their faces familiar beneath wide-brimmed reed hats. Even the tools were replicas of those you'd used on Earth, a bronze sickle, a well-worn plow now glowing with celestial durability. What makes this belief so poignant is how it refused to romanticize idleness. To the Egyptians, a meaningful eternity wasn't lounging. It was stewardship, the joy of seeing the land flourish under your care. After all, if the gods had given them a perfect Egypt on Earth, why wouldn't they crave a perfected version of it forever? So the next time you picture paradise, forget pearly gates. The ancient Egyptians would have handed you a basket and pointed to the horizon where the fields stretched golden and endless, whispering, "This is what forever looks like." Sick and desperate, an ancient Egyptian wouldn't just visit a doctor, they'd book a night at the temple. Across the Nile, sanctuaries housed special statues carved with ears, their surfaces worn smooth by generations of hands pressing prayers into stone. These weren't mere decorations, they were divine clinics where the afflicted slept on reed mats, waiting for gods like Thoth or Hathor to slip into their dreams with diagnoses and cures. Imagine lying in that shadowed hall, feverish and hopeful, as priest chants echoed off the walls, not just praying for healing, but expecting it to come as a whispered vision before dawn. Archaeologists have found these hearing statues in temples from Memphis to Thebes, their inscriptions promising things like Amun-Re listens to the pleading. But the real magic happened after dark. The sick would anoint the statues with oils, then sleep at their feet, believing the god's essence could travel through the stone to meet them in dreams. Some left votive offerings, tiny carved body parts representing what needed mending, while others scrawled pleas directly onto temple walls. One surviving message reads simply, "Cure my blindness and I will praise your name forever." What's remarkable is how this practice blended medicine and mysticism. While physicians prescribed herbs and splints, the temple offered something science couldn't, a direct line to divine wisdom. Dreams weren't just subconscious babble. They were encrypted messages from deities who knew the root of every illness. A priest might interpret a vision of Horus holding an ankh as instructions to use honey on a wound, or take a dream of swirling Nile waters as a sign to purge toxins. But here's the twist, these statues actually work, just not in the way you'd think. Modern studies show that placebo effects and the power of suggestion can trigger real healing responses, especially for stress-related conditions. The temple's tranquil atmosphere, combined with unwavering faith, likely eased symptoms for many. Even the act of carving one's pain into stone may have provided psychological relief, an ancient form of therapy masked as ritual. And the legacy of these statues outlasted Egypt itself. Centuries later, Greek healing centers like the Asclepion adopted similar dream incubation practices, proving that some ideas transcend cultures. So the next time you toss and turn with a pounding headache, consider this. The ancients might have been onto something. Sometimes the best medicine isn't just in the body, it's in the quiet space between sleep and waking where belief and biology blur. Before time had a name, before the first sunrise split the sky, there was only none, an endless ocean of dark, churning waters. But in the city of Hermopolis, priests told of a moment when those waters stirred with purpose, giving birth to Autumn, the first god who rose alone from the depths. This wasn't just a creation story, it was the origin of the Aeneid, the sacred 9 deities who shaped existence itself. Autumn, the creator, stood at the center of this divine family tree, but his story began with an act as strange as it was profound. He brought forth the next gods not through union, but through sheer will, sneezing Shu, the god of air, into being and spitting out Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. From this unlikely beginning, the cosmos took shape. Shu and Tefnut gave birth to Jeb, the earth, and Nut, the sky, whose arched body became the star-studded canopy separating chaos from order. Their children Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys completed the Aeneid, each representing forces that balanced the world. But what's striking isn't just the family drama, it's how every element of creation emerged from contradiction. Air Shu and moisture Tefnut spawned earth and sky, which had to be forcibly separated to make room for life. Nut's body stretched over Jeb like a lover eternally held apart, their union forbidden to prevent the collapse of the world they'd built. Heliopolis's priests didn't just recite this myth, they lived it. The temple's rituals mirrored creation itself, with sacred pools symbolizing nuns' waters and obelisks representing the first rays of light piercing the darkness. Even the city's layout echoed the Aeneid structure: 9 districts, 9 gates, 9 pillars holding up the cosmological order. When a pharaoh claimed descent from Autumn, he wasn't just boasting, he was staking his right to rule on the very architecture of reality. Yet the Aeneid's true power lay in its flexibility. While other cultures saw creation as a one-time event, the Heliopolitan myth was cyclical. Each sunrise reenacted autumn's emergence from none. Each Nile flood echoed the return of primal waters, not as destruction but as renewal. This wasn't just a story about the past, it was a map for navigating an ever-regenerating universe where even chaos could birth divinity. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by life's unpredictability, remember the Aeneid. From a single god's sneeze came the air we breathe, and from a spit spark the moisture that gives life. Chaos, it seems, has always been the womb of order. In the silent depths of an Egyptian tomb, one feature stood out among the gold and hieroglyphs, a door that led nowhere. Carved into the burial chamber's west wall, this false door was no architectural mistake. It was a sacred threshold, meticulously designed to be both barrier and gateway, allowing the deceased to move freely between the realm of the living and the afterlife. Unlike the grand temple entrances meant for gods and pharaohs, this door was intimate, often inscribed with the tomb owner's name and titles, as if to say, "This passage belongs to me alone." The false door's magic lay in its duality. To human eyes, it was solid stone, but to the Ka, the life force of the dead, it was as real as the Nile's currents. Families would gather before it during festivals, placing offerings of bread, beer, and roasted meat on a low altar. The scent of incense would curl around the door's edges as priests recited spells, transforming the physical offerings into spiritual sustenance that could pass through the illusory barrier. Some doors even had carved bread molds or wine jugs beside them, a permanent menu for eternity. But here's what's fascinating: these doors weren't just for nobles. Even modest tombs in workers' cemeteries featured smaller, cruder versions. A farmer might have a false door painted onto mud brick rather than carved in limestone, but the principle remained the same. Death didn't erase connection. It simply required new ways to bridge the divide. Archaeologists have found some doors worn smooth by centuries of touching hands, proof that generations returned to knock and commune with ancestors long after their names faded from memory. The false door also reveals a profound truth about Egyptian spirituality. The afterlife wasn't a distant heaven, it was a parallel world layered atop the living one like a reflection in the Nile. Just as the sun god Ra traveled through the underworld each night, the dead could step through their door at will, checking on descendants or enjoying festival music drifting from the village. It was a belief that turned tombs not into sealed vaults but into active portals, proof that even in death, no one was ever truly locked away. So the next time you see a door, remember, to the ancients, the most important ones weren't those that opened, but those that simply pretended to. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, ancient Egyptians witnessed what they believed was the most sacred act of divine motherhood: the sky goddess Nut, her star-studded body stretching across the heavens, swallowing Ra whole. This wasn't destruction, it was rebirth in motion. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like sunset, but to them, it was a celestial drama where Nut's mouth opened like a cosmic gateway, drawing the sun god into her body for his nightly journey through her starry womb, only to be born again from her each dawn, fresh and radiant. Nut's role wasn't passive. She was the ultimate protector, her arched body forming a barrier between the ordered world and the chaos of the outer dark. Tomb paintings show her in vivid detail, her limbs touching the eastern and western horizons, her belly a canopy of constellations, her fingers and toes grazing the earth as she cradled the sun's cycle. But here's what's mesmerizing. This daily act of consumption and rebirth wasn't just symbolic. It was a literal lifeline. Without Nut's willingness to swallow Ra each night, the sun might vanish forever, leaving the world frozen in darkness. The Egyptians mapped this journey with precision. Ra's nightly passage through Nut's body was divided into 12 perilous hours, each marked by challenges demons to outwit, gates to unlock, and the ever-present threat of Apophis, the chaos serpent. Nut's organs became waystations. Her breath was the cool night air, her veins the rivers of the underworld. By midnight, Ra would merge with Osiris in a union of solar and ancestral power, charging both gods with renewed vitality. And as dawn approached, Nut's body would tense like a mother in labor, her eastern lips parting to release Ra as the newborn sun. But Nut's influence didn't stop with the sun. The dead, too, hoped for her embrace. Coffin texts describe how souls would climb her limbs to become stars in her celestial flesh, forever part of the cosmic cycle. Parents named children after her, invoking her protective arch. Even childbirth mirrors mirrored Nut's labor. Midwives encouraged mothers to squat like the goddess, pushing new life into the world as Nut pushed Ra into the sky. What makes this belief so profound is how it reframed darkness. Night wasn't absence, it was gestation. Each sunset was an act of trust that the goddess who swallowed light would always give it back. And when you think about it, that's a far more comforting way to face the dusk, not as an end, but as the quiet moment before another beginning. Deep in the shadowy corridors of the Egyptian underworld, where even the bravest souls tread carefully, one creature inspired more terror than most. Babi, the demon whose name meant bull of the baboons. This wasn't some mischievous primate. This was a deity of raw, unchecked violence with a thirst for blood so intense, ancient texts describe him feasting on the entrails of the unworthy. Imagine stumbling through the afterlife, only to encounter a towering baboon with razor-sharp claws and eyes glowing like embers, demanding you prove your worth or become his next meal. Babi's role was brutally simple. He guarded the thresholds between realms, testing souls attempting to pass into deeper layers of the underworld. Failed to recite the correct spells from the Book of the Dead, and his response wasn't just denial, it was annihilation. Tomb inscriptions warn of his habit to seize by the nape, a euphemism for tearing out throats. Some spells even instructed the dead to proclaim, "I am the son of earth who split open the sky." A coded boast to intimidate Babi into backing down. But here's the twist, Babi wasn't purely evil. Like many Egyptian deities of chaos, he served a purpose. His ferocity maintained order by weeding out unprepared souls, ensuring only those versed in sacred knowledge could progress. In a way, he was the underworld's most fearsome teacher, a deity who didn't just punish ignorance but compelled the dead to master the rituals that would save them. Even the god Osiris, in some texts, leveraged Babi's strength, using him as an enforcer against rebels threatening cosmic balance. And Babi's influence wasn't confined to myths. During certain festivals, priests would don baboon masks, channeling his energy to ward off evil spirits. Amulets carved in his likeness, though rare, have been found in tombs, suggesting some sought his protection through appeasement. It's a stark reminder that in Egyptian belief, even the most terrifying forces could be negotiated with, provided you knew the right words. So while Babi might have been the nightmare of the afterlife, he also embodied a profound truth. Knowledge wasn't just power, it was survival. In a world where spells were passports and memory was armor, even a bloodthirsty baboon could be outsmarted. That is, if you'd done your homework before death came knocking. In the heart of Memphis, a single bull could stop an empire in its tracks, not by force, but by sheer divinity. The Apophis bull wasn't just an animal to the ancient Egyptians. It was the living embodiment of Thoth, the creator god, walking among them in rippling black hide and a white diamond blaze on its forehead. Spotting the sacred markings, a crescent moon on its flank, a scarab-shaped lump under its tongue, priests would proclaim the new Apophis, and overnight, this bull would trade pasture for palace, dining on gilded hay and drinking from jeweled troughs while crowds gathered just to glimpse his holy footsteps. But the Apophis was more than a symbol. He was a cosmic barometer. His movements were interpreted as oracles. A flick of the tail could signal a bountiful harvest, while a restless night in his temple stall might warn of political unrest. During annual festivals, the bull would be paraded through streets strewn with flowers, his presence believed to renew the land's fertility. Farmers would bring sick children to touch his hooves, and diplomats sought his favor before treaty negotiations, convinced his divine instinct could sniff out deception. Yet the bull's death sent tremors through the kingdom. Unlike mortal creatures, the Apophis didn't simply perish. He underwent an elaborate 70-day mummification, wrapped in linen finer than most humans ever wore, encased in a granite sarcophagus so heavy it took teams of oxen to move. The entire nation mourned, with women smearing their faces in ash and men beating their chests as if for a pharaoh. Meanwhile, priests scoured every village for the next calf bearing the god's marks, because the world couldn't function without Thoth's presence on earth. Here's what's truly remarkable. The Apophis cult reveals how Egyptians blurred the lines between beast and deity. This wasn't symbolic worship. They believed the god's essence pulsed within the bull's veins. When a new Apophis was found, it wasn't just a replacement. It was the same divine force reborn, like the sun rising anew each morning. Even in death, the bulls were buried in a sprawling underground catacomb, the Serapeum, where each tomb bore inscriptions equating them with Osiris, the Lord of Resurrection. So while other cultures erected statues, Egypt kept its gods breathing, grazing, and charging among them. The Apophis wasn't an idol to pray to from afar. He was a reminder that divinity could be as close as the next breath from a bull's wet nose, or as fleeting as the time between one sacred heartbeat and the next. Egyptian religion wasn't a monolith, it was a vibrant tapestry of contradictions, where the same gods could play entirely different roles depending on which city you stood in. Take creation itself. In Hermopolis, priests taught that Ra, the sun god, was the supreme architect of existence, emerging from the primordial waters to ignite the first dawn. But travel just south to Memphis and you'd hear a radically different story. There, Thoth, the god of craftsmen, was credited with speaking the universe into being, his words shaping matter like a sculptor's hands shaping clay. This wasn't just a trivial discrepancy, it was a theological clash at the highest level, with each city's version of events claiming supremacy. What's fascinating isn't that these contradictions existed, it's that they coexisted without crisis. The Egyptians didn't feel compelled to reconcile these stories into a single, correct narrative. Instead, they embraced the fluidity, allowing regional traditions to thrive side by side. In Hermopolis, creation began with 8 frog and serpent-headed gods stirring the cosmic waters, while in Thebes it was Ammon, a hidden force who breathed life into the world. These weren't competing truths, they were layers of a deeper mystery, each revealing a different facet of the divine. Temples doubled as battlegrounds for these ideological differences, though the conflict was subtle. A priest of Ra might inscribe hymns praising his god as the one who made himself, while Thoth's devotees carved counter-narratives into their own walls, declaring their deity the tongue and heart of all creation. Even the gods' relationships shifted across regions. In some texts, Hathor was Ra's daughter, in others, his vengeful alter ego. Osiris could be a murdered king in one city and a cosmic force of resurrection in another. Yet this diversity didn't weaken Egyptian religion, it gave it resilience. When conquerors or droughts threatened one center of worship, another could rise without disrupting the broader faith. It also allowed for astonishing flexibility. A pharaoh could honor Ptah in Memphis one week and Ra in Heliopolis the next, not as hypocrisy, but as reverence for the many ways the divine revealed itself. So while modern minds might crave a singular, tidy origin story, the Egyptians understood something profound. That truth, like the Nile, could flow in many channels, each nourishing the land in its own way. Their myths weren't broken because they disagreed, they were alive, shifting like sand under the weight of countless feet, each step leaving its own imprint on the path to eternity. The sacred beliefs of ancient Egypt didn't just live in temples, they shaped every brushstroke on a tomb wall, every prescription in a medical scroll, even the laws etched onto royal decrees. Take the humble eye of Horus, for instance. What began as a mythic symbol of healing and restoration became a practical tool in medicine. Doctors used its fractions to measure ingredients for remedies, believing the divine proportions could cure everything from headaches to broken bones. A physician treating a fever might combine 1/32nd part mandrake root measured by the eye's spiral marking with honey, invoking the gods' protection as they stirred. This wasn't just faith, it was faith fused with science, where a healer's scalpel and a priest's incantation held equal weight. Artists, too, wielded religion like a chisel. Every statue of a pharaoh wasn't merely a portrait, it was a vessel. The granite and gold figures we admire in museums today were believed to house the king's divine essence, their rigid poses and oversized limbs deliberately breaking realism to convey eternal power. Even the colors held sacred meaning. Lapis blue for the heavens, golden yellow for the sun's immortality, vibrant greens for rebirth. When a painter outlined Osiris in jet black to symbolize fertile Nile silt, they weren't just decorating a tomb, they were participating in the god's resurrection cycle. And then there was governance. Pharaohs didn't just rule, they performed. The Heb-Sed festival, held after 30 years of a king's reign, wasn't a celebration, it was a ritual reinvention. The aging ruler would run a ceremonial race, proving his physical and divine fitness to continue embodying Horus on earth. Fail to complete the course, and the priesthood might whisper of a need for transition. Even tax collection had holy undertones. Scribes recorded harvest yields in cubits, the same unit used to build temples, as if ensuring the economy mirrored cosmic harmony. A farmer's surplus wasn't just grain, it was proof Mat's balance held sway. What's astonishing is how seamlessly these threads intertwined. A single drought could prompt a pharaoh to order new statues of the Nile god Hapi, while physicians prescribed prayers alongside herbal poultices. The legal system mirrored the weighing of the heart ceremony, with viziers acting as earthly versions of Osiris, judging cases with scales as literal as they were symbolic. This wasn't a society that separated church and state. It was one where every law, every cure, every stroke of paint whispered the same truth. The sacred and the mundane weren't just connected. They were the same thing. From heart-weighing ceremonies to drunken festivals under the stars, ancient Egyptian religion wove together the bizarre and the profound in ways that still leave us marveling. These 25 beliefs paint a vivid portrait of a civilization that saw divinity in scribbled spells and sacred baboons, where the afterlife smelled of freshly harvested grain and gods could be reborn from a bull's next breath. What's truly astonishing isn't just the strangeness of these ideas, it's how they reveal a people who refuse to separate the cosmic from the everyday. For them, the universe wasn't a distant mystery. It was a conversation, one where every shadow, every sip of beer, every stroke of a painter's brush pulsed with meaning. We might chuckle at the thought of a god sneezing deities into existence or priests dancing to appease a tipsy goddess, but look closer. These weren't whimsical fantasies. They were sophisticated attempts to explain life's biggest questions. How do we measure a soul's worth? What happens when the sun disappears each night? Can love outlast death? The Egyptians answered with scales, serpents, and spells, crafting a spiritual world as intricate and flood-fertile as their beloved Nile. And here's the remarkable truth: we're still unraveling their insights. Modern archaeologists pore over dream incubation temples, wondering if placebo effects explain their healing power. Psychologists study the Book of the Dead's confessional spells, recognizing them as early blueprints for moral self-reflection. Even our fascination with mummies echoes their unshakable conviction that the body isn't just a shell, it's a sacred anchor for eternity. So tell us, which of these beliefs caught you off guard? Was it the shadow soul guarding sleepers or the moonlit math hidden in Thoth symbols? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you've enjoyed this dive into history's strangest corners, hit subscribe. The past is packed with stories waiting to be unearthed, and we're just getting started. After all, if there's one thing the Egyptians taught us, it's that every ending, whether a setting sun or a closing video, is really the start of something.